The canyon wall screamed past at 400 knots. Rachel Carter gripped the stick with both hands as the A-10's wings cleared jagged rock by 3 meters on each side. Her fuel gauge flashed red. Warning alarms shrieked in her headset. Below her, 12 men were dying. "She's going to kill herself," Lieutenant Hale whispered into his radio, watching the Warthog dive straight into the kill box. Then the GAU-8 cannon roared. The sound shook the canyon floor like an earthquake. 200 enemy fighters looked up in disbelief as armor-piercing rounds tore across their positions at 70 rounds per second. Someone on the SEAL team breathed one word: Valkyrie. Before we begin this story, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Stay with me until the very end. You won't believe what happens next. And comment below with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to where it all started. 23 minutes before the canyon, Rachel Carter was bored. She banked the A-10 Warthog through another lazy turn over the desert, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Her fuel gauge showed 42 minutes remaining. Her mission clock showed 13 minutes until she could turn for home. Hawkeye 1-1, this is Overlord. Status check. Rachel keyed her radio. Overlord, Hawkeye 1-1. Sector 14 is clear. No movement, no thermal signatures. Request clearance to RTB. Copy that, Hawkeye. You're cleared to... Static erupted across the emergency frequency. Rachel's hand froze on the throttle. Under heavy fire, coordinates, anyone. The transmission cut out. Rachel switched frequencies, her heart rate jumping. Overlord, Hawkeye 1-1. I'm picking up a distress call on emergency frequency. Can you confirm? Silence. Overlord, do you copy? More static. Then a different voice broke through, younger, strained, desperate. Any aircraft, this is Viper 6. We are taking heavy casualties. Approximately 200 hostiles on the ridges. We are surrounded. Ammunition critical. Medical critical. If anyone can hear this transmission... Rachel's training took over. She pulled up the coordinate system and entered the numbers the voice was repeating. Her blood went cold. The coordinates were 47 miles northeast, deep in hostile territory, inside a canyon system that intelligence had flagged as a no-fly zone 3 months ago. Viper 6, this is Hawkeye 1-1. I copy your transmission. What is your situation? The response came back immediately, and she could hear gunfire in the background. Hawkeye 1-1, we are a 12-man special operations team trapped in a canyon. Enemy forces hold the high ground on all sides. We have 4 wounded, ammunition down to less than 100 rounds total. Closest friendly units are 90 minutes out. We need air support now or we're not making it out. Rachel checked her fuel gauge again. 40 minutes. The canyon was 20 minutes away. That left her maybe 10 minutes on station before she'd be flying on fumes. And that assumed she could even get into the canyon, something no A-10 pilot had ever attempted in terrain like this. Her tactical display showed no other aircraft within range. No helicopters, no drones, nothing. She was the only thing in the sky that could help them. Viper 6, Hawkeye 1-1. I need to know the canyon dimensions. Width at your position. A pause. Hawkeye, the canyon is approximately 150 feet wide where we're pinned down. Walls are vertical. Multiple rock formations jutting out. It's a goddamn death trap. Rachel's A-10 had a wingspan of 57 feet. Theoretically possible. Practically insane. Viper 6, what's your fuel status on signal flares? We've got 2 smoke grenades left. Orange. Pop one now. I'm 18 minutes out. Hawkeye, the voice paused. Are you seriously considering flying into this canyon? Rachel pushed the throttle forward. I'm not considering it. I'm doing it. Mark your position and get your heads down. She banked hard northeast and dropped to 2,000 feet. The voice came back, quieter now. Roger that, Hawkeye. We'll be ready. Rachel switched back to the command frequency. Overlord, Hawkeye 1-1. I'm breaking patrol pattern to provide emergency air support to Viper 6. Coordinates transmitted. Requesting immediate QRF dispatch to those coordinates. The response took 15 seconds. Hawkeye 1-1, negative. You are not cleared for operations in that sector. Canyon terrain is designated no fly. Return to base immediately. Rachel's jaw tightened. Overlord, Viper 6 has 12 men down there with 4 wounded and no ammunition. There are no other assets available. I'm the only aircraft in range. Hawkeye 1-1, you are ordered to RTB. That terrain will destroy your aircraft. QRF is being scrambled, but ETA is 75 minutes. Viper 6 will have to hold position. Rachel looked at her fuel gauge. 38 minutes. She thought about 12 men crouched in a canyon, listening to 200 fighters closing in on them. 4 of them bleeding out, all of them counting their last bullets. 75 minutes might as well be 75 years. Overlord, Hawkeye 1-1. I didn't copy that last transmission. Experiencing radio interference. Proceeding to provide air support to Viper 6. Hawkeye 1-1, you are ordered to... Rachel switched off the command frequency. Her hands were steady on the controls. She just ended her career. Disobeying a direct order in combat meant a court-martial. It meant losing her wings. It meant losing everything she'd worked for since she was 17 years old. But 12 men were about to die. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. The desert terrain began to shift below her. Flat sand gave way to rolling hills, then to jagged rock formations that jutted up like broken teeth. In the distance, she could see the dark slash of the canyon system cutting through the landscape. Viper 6, Hawkeye 1-1, I'm 12 minutes out, give me a tactical picture. The voice, Lieutenant Hale, she now knew from the call sign, came back strong despite the chaos she could hear behind him. Hawkeye, we've got approximately 80 fighters on the eastern ridge, 70 on the western ridge, and 50 more moving up the southern approach. They've got RPGs, heavy machine guns, and at least 2 technical vehicles with mounted weapons. They're holding back right now, probably waiting for us to run dry before they move in for the kill. What's the terrain like inside the canyon? Narrow, multiple rock pillars and formations. The walls are nearly vertical with a lot of overhangs. Wind shear is unpredictable. We watched a drone try to fly through here yesterday, and it got torn apart by crosswinds. Rachel's stomach tightened. Copy that. I'm going to make a run on the eastern ridge first. When you hear my cannon, that's your signal to move to the western wall for cover. Clear? Clear. Hawkeye, he paused. What's your name? She almost smiled. Carter, Captain Rachel Carter. Well, Captain Carter, I'm Lieutenant Marcus Hale. When this is over, I'm buying you a drink. When this is over, Lieutenant, you're buying me a whole damn bottle. 8 minutes out, the canyon appeared on her horizon, a dark gash splitting the earth. From this altitude, it looked impossibly narrow. She could see the smoke rising from inside it now, and the tiny flashes of gunfire along the ridges. Rachel descended to 1,000 feet and armed her weapon systems. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon came online with a low hum. 7 barrels, 4,000 rounds per minute, each round capable of punching through armored vehicles. She'd trained for this her entire career. Every simulation, every exercise, every range qualification. But nothing had prepared her for flying into a canyon barely wider than her aircraft to save men she'd never met. Viper 6, I have visual on your smoke. Orange marker confirmed. I'm coming in from the north, 30 seconds. We see you, Hawkeye. God, you're actually doing this. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest. The canyon walls rose up on either side of her like the jaws of a trap. She could see the enemy fighters now, dark figures scattered along the ridges, some pointing up at her aircraft. They didn't think she'd actually enter the canyon. They were about to learn otherwise. She nosed down and dropped below the rim of the canyon. The world transformed instantly. Rock walls shot past on both sides. The A-10 bucked and shuddered as crosswinds slammed into it from every direction. Her altitude warning shrieked. Her terrain avoidance system screamed at her to pull up. Rachel ignored it all. She spotted the enemy position on the eastern ridge, a cluster of fighters with an RPG team setting up behind sandbags. She centered the targeting reticle and squeezed the trigger. The cannon roared. The sound was unlike anything else in warfare, a deep, bone-shaking "Bert" that echoed off the canyon walls and seemed to come from everywhere at once. Tracers arced across the distance. Dust and rock exploded along the ridge. The RPG team disappeared in a cloud of debris. Below, Lieutenant Hale and his team pressed themselves against the western wall as rounds tore across the position that had been killing them for the last hour. "Holy shit," one of the SEALs whispered. "She's inside the canyon." Rachel pulled up hard, clearing the southern ridge by 20 feet. Her whole aircraft shook from the violence of the maneuver. She banked left, circling back around for another pass. Viper 6, eastern ridge is suppressed, moving to western ridge. "Hawkeye, you just took out their heavy weapons team. We've got breathing room, but they're already repositioning." Rachel checked her fuel. 28 minutes. She'd used 10 minutes just getting here and making one pass. This was going to be close. She came around for the second run, approaching from a different angle. The western ridge was more fortified. She could see fighting positions carved into the rock, with heavy machine guns mounted behind stone barriers. They opened fire as she approached. Tracers streaked past her canopy. Something pinged off her armored nose. Rachel held her course steady and fired again. The GAU-8 chewed through the stone barriers like they were cardboard. Machine gun positions vanished under the onslaught. Secondary explosions erupted as ammunition stores detonated. But the real threat was still ahead. As Rachel pulled out of the canyon for the second time, Lieutenant Hale's voice came through with new urgency. "Hawkeye, we've got a problem. The southern ridge has the main force, at least 50 fighters with vehicles. They're setting up mortars. If they get those operational, they can fire straight down on our position. We'll be sitting ducks." Rachel looked at the southern approach. It was the narrowest part of the canyon. Rock formations jutted out from both walls like fingers trying to touch each other. Wind shear would be at its worst there, and to hit the targets, she'd have to fly through it at full speed with less than 50 feet of clearance on either side. "Viper 6, I see them. Stand by." She banked the A-10 around and lined up for the approach. Her training officer's voice echoed in her mind from years ago. "The A-10 is tough, but it's not magic. Respect the aircraft's limits or it'll kill you." She was about to test those limits. Rachel pushed the throttle forward and dove straight into the narrow section of the canyon. The walls closed in immediately. Rock formations flashed past so close she could see individual cracks in the stone. The wind tried to flip her aircraft sideways. Every instinct screamed at her to pull up, to get out, to abort. She flew straight through it. The southern ridge opened up before her, a natural shelf where trucks were parked and mortar teams were setting up their weapons. They looked up in shock as the A-10 appeared directly in front of them, flying at nearly 400 knots through terrain that should have been impossible. Rachel fired. The cannon rounds walked across the position like a line of explosions. Trucks erupted into fireballs. Mortars tumbled off the ridge. Fighters scattered in every direction. But Rachel was still inside the narrow section. A rock pillar appeared directly in her flight path. She banked hard right, her wingtip missing the stone by less than 3 feet. The aircraft shuddered violently. Metal groaned. For one terrible second, she thought she'd clipped it. Then she was through, shooting out the southern end of the canyon into open air. She pulled up hard, gasping for breath. "Viper 6, southern ridge is neutralized. How copy?" Silence. "Viper 6, do you copy?" More silence. Rachel's heart stopped. Then Lieutenant Hale's voice came through shaking. "Hawkeye, we copy. We're still processing what we just saw. That was the most insane flying I've ever witnessed." One of his men shouted in the background, Who the hell is flying that thing? Rachel allowed herself one breath of relief. Then she checked her fuel gauge. 18 minutes. Viper 6, I've got one more pass in me, maybe two. What's your situation? The main threats are down. We're taking scattered fire but nothing coordinated. Enemy forces are breaking contact and retreating. I think, he paused, I think you just saved our lives. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. We still need to get you extracted. What's your casualty status? 4 wounded, 2 critical. We need medevac as soon as possible. Rachel switched to the emergency frequency. Any helicopter units, this is Hawkeye 1-1. I need immediate medevac at my coordinates for 4 casualties, 2 critical. Enemy forces are retreating but could regroup. Request immediate response. A new voice came through, calm, professional. Hawkeye 1-1, this is Rescue 3-1. We're 20 minutes from your position. Can you maintain air cover until we arrive? Rachel looked at her fuel gauge again. 16 minutes. She'd be flying on fumes by the time the helicopters arrived. There was a real chance she wouldn't make it back to base. Rescue 3-1, affirmative. I'll keep the area clear. She circled above the canyon, watching the enemy fighters scatter into the hills. Some were regrouping about 2 miles to the east, but they weren't moving back toward the canyon. They'd learned their lesson. Lieutenant Hale came back on the radio. Hawkeye, the enemy is pulling back. You've got them running scared. They'll think twice before setting up another ambush in a canyon. Captain Carter, his voice was serious now, I need you to know something. Command ordered you to turn back, didn't they? Rachel didn't answer immediately. I experienced radio interference, Lieutenant. Right, radio interference. He paused. You just threw away your career for 12 men you've never met. I didn't throw away anything. I did my job. Your job was to follow orders. My job is to bring people home. The radio went quiet for a moment. Then another voice broke in, one of the other SEALs. Ma'am, when we heard that cannon, we knew we were going home. Whatever happens after this, you need to know that. Rachel felt her throat tighten. Just keep your heads down until the helicopters arrive, gentlemen. She continued her patrol pattern, watching the hills for any sign of enemy movement. The sun was setting now, painting the canyon walls in shades of red and gold. 12 minutes of fuel remaining. The helicopters appeared on her radar, 2 Black Hawks flying fast and low. Hawkeye 1-1, Rescue 3-1. We have visual on the canyon, moving in for extraction. Copy that, Rescue 3-1. Area is secure. Casualties are marked with orange smoke. The helicopters descended into the canyon. Rachel watched as the SEALs loaded their wounded and climbed aboard. The whole extraction took 4 minutes. Hawkeye 1-1, Rescue 3-1. We have all personnel departing the area. Thanks for keeping the welcome mat out. Good hunting, Rescue. Get those men home safe. The helicopters lifted off and banked southwest toward friendly territory. Rachel checked her fuel one last time. 8 minutes. Her home base was 16 minutes away. She switched to the emergency frequency. Any station, this is Hawkeye 1-1. I am critically low on fuel and may not make it back to base. Request emergency landing options. A response came immediately, a different forward operating base, closer. Hawkeye 1-1, this is Viper Base. We can take you. We're 12 minutes northwest of your position. We'll have the runway clear and emergency crew standing by. Viper Base, Hawkeye 1-1, I'm on my way. She turned northwest and nursed the throttle, trying to conserve every drop of fuel. The desert slid past below her. The sun touched the horizon. Her fuel gauge dropped to 5 minutes, then 4, then 3. The base appeared ahead, a cluster of lights in the gathering darkness. Viper Base, Hawkeye 1-1, I have visual on your field, beginning approach. Hawkeye 1-1, you are cleared for emergency landing. Runway 27, winds are calm. 2 minutes of fuel. Rachel lined up on final approach. The runway lights stretched out before her like a pathway home. 1 minute. The A-10's wheels touched down with a screech of rubber. Rachel engaged the brakes and felt the aircraft slow. The engines coughed once, twice, then died completely. The A-10 rolled to a stop halfway down the runway, its fuel tanks completely dry. Rachel sat in the cockpit for a long moment, her hands still gripping the controls. She just violated direct orders, flown through impossible terrain, and landed with literally zero fuel remaining, and she'd saved 12 lives. Emergency crews swarmed the aircraft. Someone opened her canopy. A crew chief looked up at her with something like awe. "Ma'am, that was the gutsiest flying I've ever seen. How much fuel did you land with?" Rachel unstrapped her harness and climbed out of the cockpit. "None. Not a drop." The crew chief whistled low. "Captain, there's a colonel waiting for you in the ops center." He didn't sound happy. Rachel nodded. She'd known this was coming. The walk to the operations center felt longer than the flight through the canyon. She could feel the weight of what she'd done settling onto her shoulders. She'd disobeyed orders. She'd endangered a valuable aircraft. She'd violated safety protocols and flight regulations. And she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. The colonel was standing at the tactical display when she entered. He didn't turn around. "Captain Carter, I've been informed that you experienced radio interference that prevented you from receiving your orders to return to base." "Yes, sir. I've also been informed that this radio interference occurred immediately after I gave you a direct order, and that your radio worked perfectly fine when communicating with the ground team and the rescue helicopters." Rachel stood at attention. "The radio is unpredictable in that terrain, sir." The colonel finally turned around. His face was hard, unreadable. "Captain, do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Disobeying orders in a combat zone is a court-martial offense. You could lose your wings. You could lose your commission. You could end up in prison." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you just threw away a promising career to play hero." Rachel met his eyes. "Sir, 12 men are alive right now because of what I did. 4 of them will see their families again because I didn't turn back. If that cost me my career, then it cost me my career. But I'd make the same choice every single time." The colonel stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression shifted slightly. "Those 12 men you saved? One of them is the son of a 3-star general. Another is a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. The team leader has been on 17 deployments and has saved more lives than I can count. Every single one of them is calling you a hero right now." He walked closer. "But that doesn't change the fact that you violated direct orders. So here's what's going to happen. You're grounded pending an investigation. You'll submit a full report. There will be an inquiry, and then we'll see what the brass decides." "Yes, sir." "Dismissed." Rachel saluted and turned to leave. "Captain?" She stopped. The colonel's voice was quieter now. "Off the record? That was some of the finest flying I've ever seen. If I'd been in that canyon, I'd want you overhead." Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. "Thank you, sir." She walked out into the night air and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 men were flying home. And whatever came next, she'd face it knowing she'd made the right choice. The only choice. Rachel was still standing there when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hit the green button. "Captain Carter?" The voice was rough, older, with the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. "Speaking. This is General Robert Brennan. I believe you met my son today." Rachel's breath caught. The 3-star general. Lieutenant Hale had mentioned one of the SEALs was a general's son. "Sir, My boy called me 20 minutes ago. He was crying. Do you know the last time I heard my son cry, Captain?" Rachel's throat went dry. "No, sir. His wedding day, 7 years ago. And today, when he called to tell me he was alive because some pilot flew into hell to pull him out." The general's voice cracked slightly. "He told me what you did. He told me about the canyon. He told me you disobeyed orders to save his team. Sir, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me, Captain. I'm calling to say thank you, and to tell you that what happens next isn't going to be what you think. The line went dead. Rachel stared at her phone. What the hell did that mean? She didn't have time to process it. The door to the operations center opened, and a young lieutenant stepped out. Captain Carter, the colonel wants to see you again. Now. Rachel followed him back inside. The colonel wasn't alone this time. 3 other officers stood around the tactical display, and their faces were grim. Captain Carter, we have a situation. The colonel pulled up a satellite feed on the main screen. 30 minutes ago, intelligence intercepted enemy communications. They're planning a major offensive at dawn, hitting 3 forward operating bases simultaneously. The attack we stopped today in that canyon? It was a diversion. Rachel's stomach dropped. A diversion for what? They were drawing our air assets away from the real target zones. And it worked. We've got almost no air cover available. Every attack helicopter is committed. Every fast mover is on other missions. We're stretched thin. One of the other officers spoke up, a major with intelligence insignia. Captain, the enemy knows about what you did today. They're calling you the demon pilot on their communications. They're telling their fighters to avoid canyon operations entirely. Rachel blinked. I don't understand. How does this? The colonel cut her off. The northern base is inside a valley system, similar terrain to where you operated today. The enemy is planning to attack from the high ground, and we have no air assets that can operate effectively in that terrain. The implication hit her like a physical blow. Sir, I'm grounded, you said. I know what I said, but I also know that 200 Marines are about to get slaughtered at dawn if we don't have air support that can operate in extreme terrain. The room went silent. The colonel looked at her directly. I'm giving you a choice, Captain. Stay grounded and let the investigation proceed, or get back in that cockpit and save more lives. But if you fly, you're doing it knowing that you're digging yourself deeper into trouble. Command is furious about today. If you fly again, there won't be any gray area left. You'll be court-martialed for sure. Rachel's mind raced. This was insane. They were asking her to violate orders again, this time knowingly, deliberately, with full awareness of the consequences. How long until the attack? 6 hours. Dawn is at 05:30. And if I refuse? The major answered quietly. Then we evacuate the base and cede the territory. 200 Marines pull back, and the enemy takes strategic high ground that controls the entire northern sector. Rachel closed her eyes. She thought about Lieutenant Hale's voice on the radio, about 12 men who got to go home because she'd made a choice. Now 200 more lives hung in the balance. I'll need full tactical briefing, updated weather, and a complete intelligence package on the enemy positions. The colonel's expression didn't change. You'll have it in 20 minutes. Your aircraft is already being refueled and rearmed. Sir, with respect, how did you know I'd say yes? The colonel almost smiled. Because, Captain, I've read your file. You've never walked away from a fight in your life. The briefing room filled up fast. Rachel stood at the front, looking at terrain maps that made the canyon from earlier look simple by comparison. The northern base, call sign Viper North, sat in a valley surrounded by ridgelines on 3 sides. Intelligence showed enemy forces massing on all 3 ridges, with heavy weapons, mortars, and anti-aircraft systems. They've got SA-7 shoulder-fired missiles, the intelligence major said, pointing at the map. At least a dozen confirmed. They're positioned specifically to counter air support. Rachel studied the approaches. Every route into the valley was a kill box. What about the Marines on the ground? What's their defensive capability? They've got 200 personnel, light weapons, 2.50 caliber positions, and no armor. The base was supposed to be a logistics hub, not a combat outpost. They're not equipped for a siege. Why not evacuate now? Because, the colonel said, The enemy has already blocked the southern road with an ambush force. If the Marines try to leave now, they'll be caught in the open. They need air support to suppress the enemy long enough to pull back safely. Rachel looked at the timeline. 6 hours until dawn. 4 hours to prep the mission. 2 hours of darkness to position herself. I'll need a weapons loadout optimized for anti-personnel and light vehicles. Maximum cannon rounds. And I want flares, lots of flares. If they're using SA-7s, I need countermeasures. Done. Rachel turned to the intelligence officer. Do we have any assets on the ground near those ridgelines? Anyone who can provide targeting information? Negative. All our ground teams are committed elsewhere. Then I'm going in blind. The major shifted uncomfortably. Captain, SA-7s are heat seekers. Your aircraft is designed to take hits, but if they get a lucky shot on your engines, I know the risks, Major. The briefing continued for another hour. Every detail, every contingency, every possible disaster scenario. When it ended, Rachel had 2 hours before takeoff. She walked to the small ready room and sat down, her hands shaking slightly. This was different from the canyon. In the canyon, she'd acted on instinct, no time to think, just react. Now she had time. Time to fully understand that she was about to end her career. Time to realize that after this mission, she'd face a court-martial, lose her wings, possibly face prison time. And she was doing it anyway. The door opened. A group of men walked in, still wearing dust-covered combat gear. Lieutenant Hale led them. Rachel stood up quickly. Lieutenant, what are you? We heard you're flying again tonight. Rachel glanced at the other 11 men behind him, the entire SEAL team from the canyon. That's classified information, Lieutenant. Hale smiled grimly. Yeah, well, classified information travels fast when it involves the pilot who saved our lives. One of the other SEALs stepped forward, a massive man with sergeant stripes. Ma'am, we also heard you're getting court-martialed for what you did today. Rachel didn't answer. The sergeant continued. We wanted you to know something. Every man in this room is prepared to testify on your behalf. We'll tell them exactly what happened. We'll tell them that without you, we'd all be dead right now. That won't matter, Rachel said quietly. I disobeyed direct orders. Testimony won't change that. Lieutenant Hale shook his head. Maybe not, but we're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of pilot you are, what kind of person you are. Another SEAL spoke up, younger, with corporal insignia. My wife is pregnant, ma'am, due in 6 weeks. I'm going to be there when my daughter is born because of you. That means something. Rachel felt her eyes burning. You don't owe me anything. Respectfully, ma'am, we owe you everything. Hale stepped closer. We heard about tonight's mission. We heard about the valley and the SA-7s. We heard it's a suicide run. It's not a suicide run. It's just complicated. Right, complicated. Just like the canyon was complicated. He paused. Captain Carter, I've been doing this job for 12 years. I've worked with the best pilots in the military, and I've never seen anyone fly like you flew today. But I also know that even the best pilots have limits. Those SA-7s are going to be looking for you. The enemy knows you're coming. Rachel met his eyes. Are you asking me not to go? No, I'm asking you to come back. Because the military needs pilots like you. And because, he hesitated, because you gave us our lives back today. We'd like you to keep yours. The room was silent. Rachel didn't trust herself to speak. Finally, she managed. I'll do my best, Lieutenant. The SEALs filed out one by one, each of them nodding to her. Hale was the last to leave. He stopped at the door. One more thing, my father called me tonight. He's a general. He told me he made some calls. I don't know what that means, but I think you've got more people in your corner than you realize. Then he was gone. Rachel sat back down, alone with her thoughts. 2 hours later, she was in the cockpit. The A-10 felt different this time. Maybe because she knew what was coming. Maybe because she was flying toward the end of everything she'd worked for. Hawkeye 1-1, Tower, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds are calm, weather is clear, good hunting. Rachel pushed the throttle forward. The runway lights blurred past. The nose lifted, and she was airborne again, climbing into the darkness. The flight north took 90 minutes. She flew low and fast, using the terrain to mask her approach. No radio chatter, no communication, complete silence. At 0400, she reached the holding pattern 30 miles south of the valley. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. Rachel armed her weapons and ran through her mental checklist one more time. Then a voice crackled through her headset, unexpected. Hawkeye 1-1, this is Viper North Actual. We've been monitoring your approach. We know you're out there. The base commander, a lieutenant colonel according to the briefing. Viper North, Hawkeye 1-1. I'm standing by for your signal. Hawkeye, I want you to know something before this starts. My Marines are ready, but they're also scared. They know what's coming. When they hear your cannon, when they know you're overhead, it's going to change everything for them. Rachel's throat tightened. I'll be there, Viper North. I know you will. I read the report from the canyon. I know what you did, and I know what it's costing you. A pause. Captain Carter, when this is over, when my Marines are safe, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did here. I'm going to make sure your name is remembered. Just keep your people alive, Colonel. That's all that matters. Roger that. We'll see you at dawn. The eastern sky turned pink, then orange. Then the first mortar rounds started falling on Viper North. Rachel checked her tactical display. Enemy forces were moving into position on all three ridgelines, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Hawkeye 1-1, Viper North. We are under attack. Multiple impacts inside the perimeter, requesting immediate air support. Rachel pushed the throttle forward and dove toward the valley. The SA-7 teams were waiting for her. She saw the first missile launch from the eastern ridge, a plume of smoke and fire arcing up toward her position. Rachel punched out flares and banked hard left. The missile chased the flares and detonated harmlessly 100 meters away. But two more missiles were already in the air. She dove toward the deck, using the terrain to break the missile's lock. One went wide. The other exploded close enough that she felt the shock wave rattle her aircraft. Damage alarms started screaming. Rachel ignored them and targeted the eastern ridge. The cannon roared. Missile positions vanished under the assault. But the enemy had learned from the canyon. They were spread out, dispersed, harder to hit with single passes. She pulled up and banked toward the western ridge. More missiles, more flares, more banking and diving and praying. A round punched through her left wing. Warning lights lit up her cockpit like a Christmas tree. Hawkeye 1-1, you're hit. You're trailing smoke. Rachel checked her systems. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Fuel leak in the left wing tank. Flight controls sluggish. But the engines were still running. She lined up on the western ridge and fired again. The battle became a blur of explosions, missile launches, flares, and cannon fire. Rachel lost track of how many passes she made. Lost track of how many missiles she dodged. Lost track of everything except the targets and the Marines below who were depending on her. Then her radar warning lit up with a new threat. A vehicle-mounted missile system, something bigger than the SA-7s. It launched. Rachel saw it coming and knew immediately she was in trouble. This missile was faster, smarter, and it was tracking her engine heat signature perfectly. She dumped every flare she had left. The missile ignored them. She dove toward the valley floor, pulling G's that made her vision narrow. The missile stayed locked. 3 seconds to impact. 2 seconds. Rachel pulled up hard and rolled inverted, throwing the aircraft into a maneuver that should have torn the wings off. The missile shot past her belly by less than 10 feet and slammed into the ridgeline behind her. The explosion was massive. Rachel rolled upright, gasping for air, her whole body shaking. Hawkeye 1-1, that was too close. You need to pull back. But she'd seen something in that last pass. The enemy was retreating. The sustained cannon fire, the destruction of their heavy weapons, the near-suicidal flying that proved she wouldn't break. It had broken them instead. They were abandoning their positions, falling back into the hills. Viper North, Hawkeye 1-1. Enemy forces are retreating. You've got a window. Get your people out, now. Copy that, Hawkeye. Convoy is moving. Rachel circled above the valley, watching the Marines stream out of the base toward the southern road. The enemy ambush force that had been blocking the route scattered as she made one final pass overhead. Within 20 minutes, every Marine was clear. The mission was complete. Rachel turned south and checked her damage. The left wing was shredded. Hydraulics were at 30%. She was leaking fuel, and she had a 200-mile flight back to base. She wasn't sure she was going to make it. Hawkeye 1-1, Viper Base. We're tracking your position. You're showing major damage. Do you need emergency assistance? Viper Base, I'm flying. That's all that matters right now. The flight back was the longest of her life. Every minute the aircraft became harder to control. Every turn required twice the force on the stick. The fuel leak worsened. But she kept flying. When the base finally appeared on the horizon, Rachel had less than 5 minutes of fuel remaining and almost no hydraulic pressure. She lined up on final approach with manual controls only. The landing was ugly. The aircraft bounced twice before settling onto the runway with a grinding screech. But she was down. Rachel shut down the engines and sat in the cockpit, too exhausted to move. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft, and standing next to them, waiting, was a man in a general's uniform. General Robert Brennan. Rachel climbed out of the cockpit on shaking legs. The general walked up to her and extended his hand. Captain Carter, it's time we had a conversation about your future. Rachel's hand was still shaking when she shook the general's. Sir, I need to debrief and... The debrief can wait. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They moved away from the flight line, away from the emergency crews examining her shredded aircraft. The general didn't speak until they were alone behind the operations building. Do you know why I'm here, Captain? To see the pilot who saved your son, sir. Wrong. His voice was hard. I'm here because 3 hours ago, I received a call from the Joint Chiefs. They want your head on a platter. Rachel's stomach dropped. Sir, you've flown 2 unauthorized combat missions in 24 hours. You've violated direct orders twice. You've endangered valuable aircraft. And you've made a lot of very powerful people look incompetent. The general's eyes were cold. The chairman himself called me. He wants you court-martialed immediately. Maximum charges. They're talking about prison time, Captain. Rachel forced herself to stand straight. I understand, sir. Do you? Because I don't think you do. The general stepped closer. They're not just angry about the disobedience. They're angry because you were right. Twice. You saved lives that command was willing to sacrifice. You proved that their orders would have gotten good men killed, and that makes them look bad. He paused. So they're going to destroy you to protect themselves. Rachel's throat went dry. What do you want me to say, sir? I want you to understand what you're up against. This isn't about military justice. This is about politics. This is about generals who made bad calls and need someone to blame. Then why are you telling me this? General Brennan's expression shifted slightly. Because my son is alive, and because I didn't spend 30 years in this military watching good officers get sacrificed for bad policy. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. That's my granddaughter, 3 years old. She got to see her father yesterday because of you. So I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer honestly. Rachel waited. Do you want to fight this? Because if you do, I can help you. But it's going to be ugly. It's going to be public. And there's no guarantee we'll win. And if I don't fight, then you accept the court-martial, take a plea deal, lose your wings quietly, and this all goes away. You'd probably avoid prison, get a dishonorable discharge, move on with your life. Rachel looked at the aircraft behind her, the A-10 that had carried her through hell twice in one day. If I accept the plea deal, what message does that send to every pilot who faces the same choice I did? That following orders matters more than saving lives? Yes. Then I can't accept it, sir. The general nodded slowly. I thought you'd say that. Good, because I've already made some calls. He glanced at his watch. In 45 minutes, you're going to be brought before an inquiry board. 3 colonels, all handpicked by people who want you gone. They're going to ask you questions designed to make you look reckless, insubordinate, and dangerous. What should I do? Tell the truth. Don't apologize, and don't let them rattle you. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. There's someone else involved in this that you need to know about. Who? The officer who gave you the order to return to base during that first canyon mission. He's claiming you deliberately ignored his command to play hero. He's pushing hard for your prosecution. Rachel's blood ran cold. The colonel from Overlord Command? No, higher than that, much higher. Before she could ask more, 2 MPs appeared. Captain Carter, you're ordered to report to the inquiry board immediately. The general gave her one last look. Remember, tell the truth. They can't break you if you don't give them anything to work with. The inquiry room was exactly what she expected. Cold, institutional, designed to intimidate. 3 colonels sat behind a long table, all of them older, all of them wearing expressions that said they'd already made up their minds. The center colonel spoke first. Captain Rachel Carter, you stand accused of willful disobedience of lawful orders, reckless endangerment of military assets, and unauthorized combat operations. How do you plead? Rachel stood at attention. I acknowledge the actions described, sir, but I dispute the characterization. The colonel on the left leaned forward, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. You dispute that you disobeyed direct orders? No, sir. I dispute that saving the lives of fellow service members constitutes reckless endangerment. Captain, you were explicitly ordered to return to base. You acknowledged that order. Then you turned off your radio and proceeded with an unauthorized mission. Is that correct? The radio experienced interference, sir. Don't insult our intelligence. The colonel's voice turned sharp. You deliberately cut communication to avoid receiving orders you didn't want to follow. Rachel met his eyes. I made a tactical decision based on the information available. 12 men were dying. No other assets were in range. I was their only chance. The third colonel spoke, older, with a chest full of ribbons. And who gave you the authority to make that decision, Captain? Who put you in charge of determining which orders to follow and which to ignore? No one, sir, but I took an oath to protect the people of this country. Those 12 men were Americans under fire. I couldn't abandon them. You took an oath to follow orders. The thin colonel slammed his hand on the table. Military discipline exists for a reason, Captain. If every pilot decided which orders to follow based on their personal judgment, we'd have chaos. With respect, sir, if every pilot blindly followed orders that would get people killed, we'd have a lot more dead soldiers. The room went silent. The center colonel's expression darkened. You're on very thin ice, Captain. I suggest you reconsider your tone. I'm simply stating facts, sir. Facts? Let's discuss facts. He pulled out a file. Fact 1. You endangered a $30 million aircraft by flying it through terrain it was never designed to operate in. Fact 2. You landed with 0 fuel, meaning you gambled with equipment and your own life. Fact 3. You repeated this behavior less than 12 hours later, resulting in severe damage to your aircraft. These are not the actions of a disciplined officer. These are the actions of someone who thinks rules don't apply to them. Rachel forced herself to stay calm. Sir, with respect, those aircraft exist to support the soldiers on the ground. If we're not willing to risk equipment to save lives, then what's the point of having them? The point, Captain, is that you don't get to make that call. You're a pilot, not a commanding general. The thin colonel jumped back in. Let's talk about the second mission, the one at Viper North. You were explicitly told that mission was optional. You were grounded, yet you flew anyway. 200 Marines needed air support, sir. Other options were being considered. What other options? The only aircraft that could operate in that terrain was an A-10, and I was the only A-10 pilot available. That's not your determination to make. Rachel's frustration finally broke through. Then whose determination is it, sir? The people who were willing to evacuate that base and leave strategic territory to the enemy? The people who were ready to sacrifice 200 Marines rather than send one pilot to help them? The center colonel stood up. Captain Carter, you are dangerously close to insubordination right now. I strongly suggest you... The door opened. Everyone turned. A brigadier general walked in, a woman Rachel didn't recognize, with Army airborne insignia. Gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with Captain Carter immediately. The center colonel bristled. General Hayes, this is a formal inquiry. We cannot... This is a direct order from CENTCOM. Captain Carter is needed for an emergency briefing. Now. The three colonels exchanged glances. General, with respect, we have priority here. This inquiry is suspended until further notice. Captain, come with me. Rachel followed General Hayes out of the room, her mind spinning. They walked in silence until they reached a secure conference room. Inside, a video screen showed a face Rachel recognized immediately. 4-star General Marcus Webb, commander of Central Command. Captain Carter, his voice was grave. We have a situation. Rachel stood at attention. Sir, 3 hours ago, enemy forces captured one of our reconnaissance drones. Not just captured, they're broadcasting footage of it. Footage showing our operational patterns, flight paths, and targeting procedures. He paused. Intel believes they're planning to use that information to set up a massive ambush. An ambush specifically designed to shoot down A-10 aircraft. Rachel's blood went cold. Sir, how many aircraft? We have 6 A-10s conducting operations in that sector. All of them are now at risk. We need to pull them back immediately and redesign our entire air support strategy for the region. How long will that take? 72 hours minimum, maybe a week. And in the meantime? General Webb's expression was grim. In the meantime, we have ground forces operating without close air support, which means casualties, which means potential mission failures. Rachel understood immediately why she was here. You want me to fly into the ambush zone, sir? No, Captain. I want you to dismantle it. He leaned forward. The enemy thinks they know how A-10s operate. They think they can predict our patterns, but they've never seen anyone fly like you fly. Intel believes you could get in, destroy their anti-aircraft positions, and clear the way for our other aircraft. Sir, I'm currently facing a court-martial. I'm aware. I'm also aware that you've saved 43 lives in the last 24 hours. And I'm aware that you're the best A-10 pilot I've ever seen. General Hayes spoke up. Captain, if you accept this mission and succeed, the charges against you will be dropped. You'll be fully reinstated. No court-martial, no inquiry, clean slate. Rachel's mind raced. This was the deal. This was the way out. But something felt wrong. Sir, permission to speak freely? General Webb nodded. Why me? You have other experienced A-10 pilots. Why risk the pilot who's already in trouble? The general was quiet for a moment. Because the other pilots follow doctrine. They fly by the book. And this mission requires someone who's willing to break every rule in that book to get the job done. He paused. You've proven you're that person, Captain. The question is, are you willing to do it one more time? Rachel thought about the inquiry board. About the 3 colonels who wanted to destroy her career, about the court-martial that was waiting if she refused. Then she thought about the ground forces who would die without air support. What's the timeline, sir? You'd launch in 6 hours. Sunset. The enemy ambush is set up in a ridge system 40 miles north of Viper North. Similar terrain to your previous missions. And if I fail? Then you die, Captain, and the court-martial becomes irrelevant. Rachel looked at General Hayes. What do you think, ma'am? The general's expression was conflicted. I think you're being used, Captain. I think they're sending you on a mission that should require a full squadron, and they're doing it because if you die, their problem goes away. But I also think you're the only one who can pull it off, and I think those ground forces deserve someone fighting for them. Rachel turned back to the screen. I need full intelligence on the ambush positions. I need updated weather, and I need a weapons loadout optimized for anti-aircraft suppression. General Webb nodded. You'll have everything you need. One more thing, sir. If I do this, if I succeed, I want the full inquiry dismissed. Not suspended, dismissed, and I want it in writing. Agreed, Rachel saluted. Then I'm in, sir. As she left the conference room, General Hayes caught her arm. Captain, be careful. There are people who want you to fail. People who benefit if you don't come back from this mission. Who? I can't prove anything yet, but watch your back out there, not just from the enemy. Rachel walked out into the fading sunlight. 6 hours until launch. She headed toward the ready room and found it full. Lieutenant Hale and his SEAL team, the Marines from Viper North, even some of the crew chiefs from the flight line. They'd all heard about the mission. Hale stepped forward. We're not letting you do this alone, Captain. Lieutenant, this is an air mission. There's nothing you can... Wrong. We've already volunteered for a ground insertion. We're going in ahead of you to mark the anti-aircraft positions, give you better targeting data. One of the Marines spoke up, a sergeant with a bandaged arm. Ma'am, you pulled us out of that valley. We're not sitting on the sidelines while you go back into hell for us. Rachel felt something break loose in her chest. This mission is voluntary. You don't have to. Neither did you, Hale said quietly, but you did it anyway, twice. Now it's our turn. The crew chief stepped forward. Ma'am, we've been working on your bird. We can't fix all the damage in 6 hours, but we can make her fly. We can make her fight. Rachel looked at the faces around her. These weren't people following orders. These were people who believed in something bigger than regulations and protocol. They believed in bringing each other home. All right, she said. Let's go over the plan. The briefing took 2 hours. Every detail, every contingency, every risk. When it was done, Rachel walked out to the flight line. Her A-10 sat there, scarred and patched but ready. Someone had painted something on the nose. A single word in white letters. Valkyrie. Rachel stared at it for a long moment. The name had spread. The legend was growing. But legends could die just as easily as anyone else. She climbed into the cockpit and started her pre-flight checks. The sun was setting behind her, and somewhere ahead, an ambush was waiting. The engine spooled up with a sound Rachel had heard 1,000 times before, but tonight it felt different. Tonight felt final. Hawkeye 1-1, Tower, you are cleared for takeoff. Wind 090 at 8 knots. Altimeter 29902. Rachel's hands moved through the checks automatically. Tower, Hawkeye 1-1, ready for departure. Godspeed, Valkyrie. The tower operator's voice cracked slightly on that last word. Rachel pushed the throttle forward and felt the A-10 surge down the runway. The damaged left wing groaned under the strain, but it held. Wheels up, climbing into the darkness. Below her, she could see the base lights fading. Ahead, only blackness, and the mission that would either save her career or end her life. Hawkeye, Viper 6, we're on the ground and moving to positions. ETA to target ridge is 20 minutes. Lieutenant Hale's voice was steady, professional, but Rachel could hear something else underneath it. Concern. Copy, Viper 6, I'm 40 minutes out. Stay low and stay quiet. Roger that, and Hawkeye, he paused. We've got your back out here. I know you do, Lieutenant. The flight north was the longest 25 minutes of her life. Rachel ran through the mission parameters again and again. 6 anti-aircraft positions according to intelligence. SA-18 missiles, newer, deadlier than the SA-7s from earlier. Each position had overlapping fields of fire, creating a kill zone that no aircraft should be able to survive. The plan was simple, in theory. Hale's team would mark the positions with infrared strobes, invisible to the naked eye, but clear as day through Rachel's targeting system. She'd hit them fast and hard before they could react. In practice, everything about this mission violated basic tactical doctrine. She was flying alone into a prepared ambush with a damaged aircraft, at night, over unfamiliar terrain. And someone in the chain of command might be actively trying to get her killed. Hawkeye, Viper 6, we're in position, beginning reconnaissance of target zone. Copy. Thermal imaging shows you clear of enemy patrols. Rachel descended to 2,000 feet and began her approach run. The ridge system appeared on her instruments, a jagged line of high ground perfect for an ambush. Then Hale's voice cut through, urgent. Hawkeye, we've got a problem. The intelligence was wrong. There aren't 6 positions. There are 12. Repeat, 12 anti-aircraft positions confirmed. They've doubled the defenses. Rachel's stomach dropped. Viper 6, are you certain? Positive. We're looking at positions all along the western ridge and additional emplacements on the eastern approach. This isn't just an ambush, it's a killing field. Rachel checked her weapons loadout. She had enough ordnance for maybe 8 targets if she made every shot count. 12 was impossible. Hawkeye, recommend abort. You can't take out 12 positions solo. You'll be torn apart. Rachel's mind raced. If she aborted, the mission failed. The court-martial proceeded. And more importantly, ground forces would remain vulnerable to this ambush for days, while command figured out an alternative plan. Negative Viper 6, I'm going in. Mark the 6 highest priority targets. I'll hit those first and see what happens. Captain, this is suicide. It's only suicide if I fail, Lieutenant. Mark the targets. A long pause. Roger, marking now. Infrared strobes began blinking on Rachel's display. 6 positions spread across the ridge system like deadly flowers. She armed her weapons and began her dive. The first position never knew what hit it. Rachel's cannon tore through the emplacement in a 3-second burst. The SA-18 launcher exploded, sending debris cascading down the ridge. But the other 11 positions were already tracking her. Missile warning alarms screamed in her cockpit. 4 launches simultaneously, coming from different angles, boxing her in. Rachel dumped flares and dove toward the deck, pushing the A-10 into a banking turn that made the damaged airframe shudder. 2 missiles chased the flares. A third went wide. The fourth kept coming. She pulled up hard, sacrificing speed for altitude, then rolled inverted and dove again. The missile overshot and detonated 100 feet above her. The shockwave hammered her aircraft like a giant fist. More warning alarms, more launches. Rachel targeted the second position and fired while still evading missiles. Her rounds hit but didn't destroy. The position was better armored than the first. Hawkeye, you've got 3 more birds in the air. Break left. Rachel banked left so hard she nearly blacked out. The missiles converged on her previous position and detonated against each other. But her luck was running out. She destroyed 1 position and damaged another. 10 remained, and they were all firing now. The sky filled with missile contrails. Viper 6, I need ground support on those positions. Can you engage? Negative, we're too far out. But we can try to wait. Hale's voice cut off. Viper 6, report. Static. Then a different voice broke through, one Rachel didn't recognize. Older, authoritative, and cold. Captain Carter, this is Colonel Richard Vaughn. I'm ordering you to break off the attack immediately and return to base. Rachel's blood turned to ice. Vaughn, the name General Hayes had mentioned, the officer pushing hardest for her prosecution. Colonel, I'm engaged with enemy forces. I cannot break off. You can, and you will, Captain. This mission was never authorized. You're operating outside the chain of command. If you continue, you'll face additional charges of insubordination. Rachel banked hard to avoid another missile. Sir, I received direct orders from General Webb. This mission is authorized. General Webb's authorization was rescinded 30 minutes ago. You're flying an illegal combat operation. Return to base immediately or face the consequences. Rachel's mind spun. This was the trap. This was what General Hayes had warned her about. They'd sent her into an ambush that intelligence said had 6 positions, but actually had 12. They'd waited until she was committed, then pulled the authorization. Now she had 2 choices: abort and face court-martial for the unauthorized mission, or continue and face court-martial for disobeying a direct order. Either way, they won. Hawkeye, Viper 6, you need to listen to me. Hale's voice was back, tight with anger. We just intercepted enemy communications. They knew you were coming. Someone leaked this mission. The ambush was designed specifically for you. Rachel dodged another missile, her hands shaking on the controls. Someone inside her own military had set her up to die. Colonel Vaughn, did you leak this mission to the enemy? Silence. Answer me, Colonel. Did you tell them I was coming? Captain Carter, you're hysterical. Return to base immediately before you get yourself killed. You son of a bitch. You leaked it. You told them exactly when I'd be here so they could shoot me down. That way I'm a dead hero instead of a court-martial problem. That's a very serious accusation, Captain. One you can't prove. Then why are there 12 positions instead of 6? Why was the authorization pulled only after I was already committed? Why are you so desperate for me to die out here? Another pause. When Vaughn spoke again, his voice was different, sharper, more honest. Because you embarrass people who matter, Captain. You made them look weak. You proved their decisions would have killed soldiers. They can't let that stand. So yes, I made sure the enemy knew you were coming. I made sure they were ready. And when you die out here tonight, you'll be remembered as a reckless pilot who got herself killed. Problem solved. Rachel's vision tunneled with rage. You're a traitor. I'm a realist. The military needs order. It needs hierarchy. It doesn't need cowboys who think they know better than command. You're a liability, Carter. Tonight, that liability gets eliminated. The transmission cut off. Rachel was alone in the sky with 10 anti-aircraft positions trying to kill her. Hawkeye, we heard all of that. Hale's voice was tight. We're recording. Vaughn just confessed to treason on an open channel. It won't matter if I'm dead, Lieutenant. Then don't die. You've survived 2 impossible missions. Survive one more. Rachel looked at her weapons display. Limited ordnance. Damaged aircraft. 10 positions still active. The smart play was to run. Get out. Get the recording to authorities. Let them handle Vaughn. But if she ran, ground forces would still be vulnerable to this ambush. Other pilots would die flying into this trap, and Vaughn would claim she abandoned the mission out of cowardice. Viper 6, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Get that recording to General Brennan. Make sure he knows what Vaughn did. And if I don't make it, tell my family I died doing what I believed in. Hawkeye, don't talk like that. We're going to get you through this. Just promise me, Lieutenant. A long pause. I promise. Now go raise hell. Rachel banked toward the densest concentration of anti-aircraft positions. If Vaughn wanted her dead, she'd make him work for it. She targeted the 3rd position and dove straight at it. No evasion, no fancy flying, just a direct attack run at full speed. The position opened fire with everything it had. Missiles launched. Machine guns traced lines of fire through the darkness. Rachel flew through the storm and fired. The cannon roared for 5 full seconds, dumping rounds into the position until it erupted in a massive explosion. 3 down, 9 to go. But she'd taken hits. Her left engine was coughing. Hydraulic pressure was dropping fast. Hawkeye, you're trailing fire. Your left engine is burning. I know. Rachel shut down the left engine and activated the fire suppression system. The flames died, but now she was flying on one engine with a heavily damaged airframe. She targeted the fourth position. More missiles, more evasion, more impossible flying. This time her rounds found an ammunition dump. The entire ridgeline lit up like daylight as secondary explosions rippled across the position. 4 down, 8 to go. Rachel's right hand was cramping from gripping the stick so hard. Her vision was starting to blur from exhaustion and G-forces. The aircraft was barely responding to her inputs, but she kept firing. The fifth position fell to a precision strike that clipped the missile launcher itself, sending it tumbling down the ridge. 5 down, 7 to go. Then her luck ran out. A missile she hadn't seen came in from her blind spot and detonated 20 feet from her right wing. The explosion tore through the wing's trailing edge. The aircraft lurched violently to the right. Warning lights covered the entire cockpit display. "Hawkeye, you're going down! Eject! Eject!" Rachel fought the controls, trying to keep the aircraft level. "Negative. I'm still flying." "Your wing is half gone. You can't." "I said I'm still flying." She targeted the sixth position, her hands shaking on the stick. The aircraft wanted to roll right. Every instinct screamed at her to eject before she lost complete control. Instead, she fired. The position vanished under her cannon fire. 6 down, 6 to go. "Viper 6, I need a route out of here. Find me the safest path away from the remaining positions." "Hawkeye, there is no safe path. They've got overlapping coverage on every approach. You'll have to run the gauntlet either way." Rachel checked her fuel. 20 minutes remaining. The damage was making the engine burn fuel twice as fast as normal. She could probably make it back to base if she left now. Or she could finish the mission. "Mark positions 7 and 8. I'm going for a double strike." "Captain, your aircraft can't take another hit." "Then I'd better not get hit. Mark the targets, Lieutenant." 2 more infrared strobes appeared on her display, positioned on opposite ends of the ridge. This was insane. She'd have to fly between the remaining positions, hit both targets in one pass, then escape before the others could track her. The margin for error was 0. Rachel nosed down and began her approach. Missile locks immediately lit up her threat display, 4 positions tracking her simultaneously. She dove toward the valley floor, using the terrain to mask her approach. The damaged wing groaned under the strain. At the last second, she pulled up and fired on position 7, while rolling hard to bring position 8 into her sights. The first target exploded. She kept firing, walking her rounds across the distance to the second target. Both positions erupted within seconds of each other. 8 down, 4 to go. But the remaining positions had her cold. 6 missiles launched in a coordinated pattern designed to cut off every escape route. Rachel's threat display showed red in every direction. She was boxed in. "Hawkeye, you've got no way out. You have to eject." Rachel looked at the missiles closing in from all sides. Then she saw something on her display, a narrow gap in the coverage, barely wide enough for her damaged aircraft. It would require flying at full speed directly toward one of the remaining missile positions, then rolling inverted and diving through a canyon mouth at the last possible second. The damaged wing would probably tear off from the stress, but it was the only way out. "Viper 6, tell my family, don't you dare finish that sentence." Rachel pushed the throttle to maximum power and flew straight at the missile position. The missiles converged behind her, chasing her thermal signature. 3 seconds to the canyon mouth. The enemy position opened fire with everything it had. 2 seconds. Rachel rolled inverted. 1 second. She dove. The wing screamed. Metal tore. The aircraft shook so violently, her vision went black. But she made it through the canyon mouth. The missiles behind her couldn't make the turn. They slammed into the canyon walls in a chain of explosions that lit up the night sky. Rachel rolled upright and pulled up, gasping for air. "Hawkeye, how the hell are you still alive?" Honestly, Lieutenant, I have no idea. She checked her aircraft status. The right wing was barely attached. Both engines were damaged. Hydraulics were at 15%. Fuel was critical, but she was still flying. Viper 6, mission status. 8 of 12 positions destroyed. The remaining 4 are on the eastern ridge. I'm Winchester on cannon rounds, but I still have... She stopped. She still had her rockets. 2 pods, full loadout. Unguided, short range, devastating, and completely inadequate for precision strikes on fortified positions. Unless she got close enough, that precision didn't matter. Hawkeye, what are you thinking? Rachel didn't answer. She was already turning back toward the ridge. Captain, you're out of cannon rounds. You can't engage those positions with just rockets. Watch me. She armed the rocket pods and began her final approach. The 4 remaining positions opened fire the moment they acquired her. Rachel flew straight at them. Missiles launched. Machine guns tracked her. Every weapon on that ridge was trying to kill her. She waited until she was 300 meters out, point-blank range for rockets. Then she fired everything. 70 rockets streaked across the distance in a wave of fire and fury. The ridge vanished under a curtain of explosions. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained but burning wreckage. 12 positions, all destroyed. Viper 6, mission complete. All targets eliminated. I'm heading home. The radio erupted with cheers. But Rachel barely heard them. She was too focused on keeping the dying aircraft in the air. The fuel gauge read 12 minutes. The base was 15 minutes away. Tower, Hawkeye 1-1, declaring emergency. I'm coming in on 1.5 engines with critical damage. Request priority landing. Hawkeye 1-1, runway is clear. Emergency crews standing by. Can you make it? Rachel looked at the fuel gauge, then at the base lights appearing on the horizon. I'm going to find out. The fuel gauge hit 8 minutes as Rachel crossed into friendly airspace. The right engine was making a sound like grinding metal. The left engine was completely dead, and the aircraft was pulling hard to the right, no matter how much pressure she put on the stick. Hawkeye 1-1, tower. We show you at 12 miles out. What's your fuel status? Critical. I might flame out before I reach the runway. Copy. We're clearing all traffic. You'll have straight-in approach. Emergency crews are positioned. Rachel fought to keep the nose level. Every minute, the aircraft became harder to control. The damaged wing was creating drag that made the A-10 want to spiral right. 5 minutes of fuel, 10 miles out. The math didn't work. Tower, I'm not going to make it to the runway. Preparing for emergency landing short of the field. Negative, Hawkeye. Terrain between your position and the base is too rough. You'll break apart on impact. Then what do you suggest? Silence. Rachel knew what they were thinking. The smart move was to eject now, let the aircraft crash in the desert, walk away alive. But something made her grip the stick tighter. This aircraft had carried her through 3 impossible missions. It had taken damage that should have torn it apart. It had brought her home twice already. She owed it one more landing. Tower, I'm staying with the bird. Clear the approach. Hawkeye, that's suicide. The aircraft is falling apart. You need to... I said, clear the approach. 3 minutes of fuel, 5 miles out. Rachel could see the base lights now. The runway stretched out like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The right engine coughed once, twice, then died completely. She was gliding now, a $30 million brick with barely any control authority and no power. 2 miles out. The aircraft was losing altitude fast. Rachel nosed down slightly, trading height for speed, trying to stretch the glide just a little further. 1 mile. She wasn't going to make the runway. She was going to hit short, maybe 500 feet from the threshold. But there was a service road there, flat, hard-packed. It would have to be enough. Tower, I'm putting her down on the service road south of runway 27. Hawkeye, that road isn't designed for... I don't have a choice. The ground rushed up at her. Rachel pulled back on the stick, trying to arrest the descent. but the damaged wing wasn't generating enough lift. The wheels hit hard. The impact slammed Rachel forward against her harness. The aircraft bounced once, came down again even harder. Metal screamed as the damaged wing dragged against the pavement. She was still moving too fast. Rachel stood on the brakes. Sparks flew as the wings scraped along the road. The aircraft slewed sideways. A light pole appeared directly in her path. Rachel yanked the stick left with everything she had. The A-10 missed the pole by inches and finally skidded to a stop in a cloud of dust and smoke. Rachel sat in the cockpit, hands still locked on the controls, unable to move. She was alive. The canopy popped open from the outside. A crew chief appeared, his face pale. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Rachel tried to speak, but her throat was too tight. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She nodded and began unstrapping with shaking hands. As she climbed out of the cockpit, her legs almost gave out. The crew chief caught her. "Easy, ma'am. Take your time." Rachel looked back at the aircraft. The right wing was completely destroyed. The fuselage was riddled with holes. The landing gear had collapsed on one side. It would never fly again. "She brought me home," Rachel whispered. Emergency vehicles surrounded them. Medics tried to check her over, but Rachel pushed them away. "I'm fine. Where's General Brennan?" "Ma'am, you need medical attention." "Where is he?" A voice cut through the chaos. "Right here, Captain." General Brennan walked toward her with General Hayes at his side. Behind them, a full security detail. And in handcuffs between two MPs, Colonel Richard Vaughn. Rachel stared. Vaughn's face was twisted with rage. "This is a mistake. I was following orders. I was protecting the integrity of the military." General Brennan ignored him and walked directly to Rachel. "Captain Carter, are you injured?" "No, sir, She looked at Vaughn. "You arrested him. Lieutenant Hale transmitted the recording of your conversation 30 minutes ago. Colonel Vaughn has been charged with treason, conspiracy, and attempted murder of a U.S. military officer." Brennan's voice was ice cold. "He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." Vaughn lunged forward against the MPs holding him. "She's the traitor. She disobeyed orders. She endangered valuable assets. I was trying to stop her before she got more people killed." Rachel stepped toward him, her exhaustion replaced by pure anger. "You leaked classified mission details to the enemy. You set up an ambush designed to kill me. You tried to frame it as a combat loss. That's not protecting the military, Colonel. That's murder. You made us all look weak. You proved that command decisions were wrong. You had to be stopped." General Hayes spoke up, her voice cutting. "Colonel Vaughn, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you exercise it." The MPs dragged him away, still shouting. Rachel watched him go, feeling something cold settle in her chest. "Sir, how many others were involved? Who else wanted me dead?" Brennan's expression darkened. "We're still investigating, but preliminary evidence suggests Vaughn was working with at least 2 other senior officers who saw you as a threat to their authority." "A threat because I saved lives?" "A threat because you proved they were wrong. In their minds, that was worse than letting soldiers die." Rachel felt sick. General Hayes stepped forward. "Captain, there's something else you need to know. The recording Lieutenant Hale transmitted didn't just go to us. It went to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and to the Secretary of Defense, and to several members of Congress who sit on the Armed Services Committee." Rachel's eyes widened. "It's gone public?" "Not yet, but it will. By tomorrow morning, every news organization in the country will have the story. A decorated pilot betrayed by her own command. A conspiracy to commit murder. 3 impossible missions that saved dozens of lives." Hayes paused. "You're about to become very famous, Captain." "I don't want to be famous. I just want to fly." Brennan smiled slightly. "Well, you're getting both. The court-martial has been dismissed. All charges dropped. You're fully reinstated with a commendation for valor." Rachel felt her knees go weak. "Sir, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. There's more." A black SUV pulled up, and a man in a suit stepped out. Rachel recognized him from news broadcasts, the Secretary of Defense. He walked directly to her and extended his hand. "Captain Carter, I've been following your missions for the last 36 hours. I've read the reports, I've listened to the recordings, and I've reviewed the inquiry board's findings." Rachel shook his hand, confused. "Sir, I don't understand." "Captain, the military needs leaders who will make hard choices. Leaders who put mission and people above politics. Leaders who have the courage to do what's right, even when it costs them everything." He paused. "I'm offering you a position at the Fighter Weapons School. You'll train the next generation of close air support pilots. You'll write new doctrine based on your experiences, and you'll make sure that what happened to you, the betrayal, the conspiracy, never happens to another pilot again." Rachel stared at him. "Sir, I'm just a captain. I'm not qualified to—" "You flew through impossible terrain 3 times. You saved 47 lives in 36 hours. You survived a coordinated attempt to kill you and still completed your mission. You're more qualified than anyone I know." General Brennan spoke up. "There's one more thing, Captain. The promotion board met in emergency session 2 hours ago. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to Major, and your call sign is being officially recognized." Rachel felt tears threatening. "Valkyrie. Valkyrie," Brennan confirmed. "The one who decides who comes home." The Secretary of Defense nodded. "Major Carter, do you accept this assignment?" Rachel looked at the destroyed A-10 behind her, at the generals standing with her, at the crowd of pilots and crew chiefs and Marines who had gathered to watch. She thought about Lieutenant Hale and his team, about the Marines at Viper North, about 12 men in a canyon and 200 more in a valley who got to see their families again. "Yes, sir, I accept." The crowd erupted in cheers. Rachel stood there, overwhelmed, as people rushed forward to congratulate her. Pilots she'd never met shook her hand. Crew chiefs saluted. Even the Secretary of Defense smiled before getting back in his SUV. Then the crowd parted and Lieutenant Hale walked through with his entire team. He stopped in front of her and saluted. "Major Carter, we wanted to be here when you landed." Rachel returned the salute, her voice thick. "You were supposed to be on your way home, Lieutenant. We delayed our flight, couldn't leave without saying goodbye to the pilot who saved our lives." The big sergeant stepped forward and held out something wrapped in cloth. "Ma'am, this is from the team. We know you're not a SEAL. We know you'll never jump out of helicopters or swim through surf. But after what you did, the way you came into that canyon when no one else would, we voted unanimously." He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a SEAL trident. "You're one of us now, and we don't forget our own." Rachel took the trident with shaking hands. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything, ma'am. Just keep flying. Keep bringing people home. That's all we ask." Rachel pinned the trident to her flight suit, right below her wings. The SEALs saluted again and walked away, boarding a waiting transport that would carry them back to their families. General Brennan waited until they were gone before speaking again. "Major Carter, you have 48 hours of medical leave. After that, you report to Fighter Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base. Your first class of students will be waiting." "Yes, sir." "And Major," he paused, "my son told me something when he called yesterday. He said that when he heard your cannon in that canyon, he knew he was going home. He knew because someone had decided his life was worth risking everything for. That's the kind of pilot you are. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that." Rachel couldn't speak. She just nodded. As Brennan walked away, General Hayes remained. "How are you really doing, Rachel?" It was the first time anyone had used her first name in days. "I'm tired, ma'am. I'm angry, and I'm terrified of what comes next." "Good. Fear means you're still human. Anger means you still care. And tired means you gave everything you had." Hayes smiled. "You're going to do great things at weapons school. You're going to teach pilots how to be brave when it matters, how to make the hard choice, how to bring people home." What if I can't? What if I mess it up? Then you'll do what you've done every time you faced impossible odds. You'll figure it out. You'll adapt, and you'll succeed. Hayes saluted and left. Rachel stood alone on the flight line as the sun began to rise. She looked at the destroyed A-10 one last time, at the word Valkyrie still visible on the damaged nose. 3 missions, 47 lives saved, a conspiracy exposed, a career saved, and now a chance to make sure the next generation of pilots would never face what she'd faced. Rachel walked toward the quarters building, exhaustion finally catching up to her. She had 48 hours to rest. Then the real work began. 6 months later, Rachel stood in front of her first class at Fighter Weapons School. 24 pilots, all experienced, all hand-picked, all looking at her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. My name is Major Rachel Carter. Some of you know me as Valkyrie. I'm here to teach you close air support tactics in extreme terrain. She paused. But before we talk about flying, I need to tell you something important. Something I learned in a canyon 40 miles behind enemy lines while 12 men waited to die. The room was silent. The rules exist for a reason. Doctrine exists for a reason. Chain of command exists for a reason. But there will come a moment in your career when you have to choose between following the rules and doing what's right, between obeying orders and saving lives. And in that moment, you'll have to decide what kind of pilot you want to be. She walked to the tactical display and pulled up footage from the Canyon mission. I'm going to show you 3 missions that violated every regulation in the book. I'm going to show you why I made those choices. And then I'm going to teach you how to fly like your life. And the lives of everyone on the ground depends on it, because someday it will. One of the students raised a hand. Ma'am, the reports say you were nearly court-martialed for those missions, that you were betrayed by your own command. Why are you still here? Rachel smiled. Because 12 men went home to their families. Because 200 Marines lived to fight another day. Because 47 people are alive right now who wouldn't be if I'd followed orders. She paused. The question isn't why I'm still here. The question is, when your moment comes, will you have the courage to make the same choice? The student nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am, I will. Good, then let's get to work. As the class began, Rachel looked out the window at the flight line where A-10s were preparing for training missions. She thought about the canyon, about the valley, about the ridge system where 12 anti-aircraft positions had tried to kill her. She thought about Lieutenant Hale and his team, about the Marines at Viper North, about every life she'd touched in those 36 hours that had changed everything. And she thought about the students behind her who would face their own impossible choices someday. Her job now was to make sure they were ready, to make sure they understood that being a pilot wasn't just about flying aircraft. It was about bringing people home. Rachel Carter had become Valkyrie because she'd refused to let good men die when she could save them. Now she would teach others to do the same. Because in the end, that's what mattered most. Not the rules, not the politics, not the regulations. Just the simple, powerful truth that some things are worth risking everything for. And bringing people home is always one of them.